Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, and welcome to a video on the subclasses of warriors in SMITE. So to catch you back up, warriors are melee, physical damage dealers with tons of flexibility, the most flexibility of any class other than mages. So we'll explain what the strengths of each subclass are, why you pick them, and what you miss out by picking them versus another one. And of course, these are just archetypes within a class and aren't actually recognized in SMITE or anything. It's just a way to help explain the character and what their strengths and playstyles might be. And of course, there is definitely going to be some overlap here. You'll see what I mean once we get into them. So let's start out with the basic ability damage warriors. So of course, what are their strengths? They're great in the laning phase. I mean, these guys are basically built to lane and control the lane. But as well, they tend to have pretty good CC. Not as much as guardians, but they definitely have enough to lock someone down. But of course, a little bit more base damage to actually kill those targets. And also, they tend to be a little bit easier. Not the easiest characters in the game, but actually yeah, they are the easiest characters in the game. Really, they're only difficult if you have a phobia of getting close to people. I only have that IRL, so I'm in the clear. So of course, why you pick them is because you just want to get through the laning phase without any trouble. I mean, yeah, there's counter matchups here and there, but generally speaking, if you don't overstep your boundaries, you're going to get through the laning phase just fine. And as I just implied, they're good counter pick options too. The next two subclasses basically get demolished by these guys, because they just push in the waves over and over again, and can still clear the camps too. By that I mean the neutral camps, like the cooldown buff and the Scorpion. So they're good at getting them really far behind. And of course also if it's early on in the draft, you just want to pick one of these guys, just to make sure you get through that laning phase and don't get too far behind. It's pretty rare, again, unless you like fall for a blink tier push into their tower or something, that you're actually going to get behind on these guys, like properly behind. Of course what you miss out on is that their damage always falls off. Always. Unless they're like 3 levels ahead, I mean, they're going to eventually start falling off and they're not going to be able to one-shot people anymore. Because of course the main reason you pick warriors is to kill the enemy backline without dying yourself. Basically like an assassin with less damage but more tank stats. So that of course means they are awful from behind. I mean, what can you really do as these characters when you're behind? As an assassin it's pretty bad, but these guys have lower base damage and lower scaling, so what are you gonna do? So of course that means late game these guys just become hit your combo at the exact right moment or lose. And depending on who you pick, this is either easy to do or hard to do. So easy one would be like Chalk Blink Ult. Wow, that was difficult. But when you talk about Blink 180 tier pushing, I mean that can get kind of difficult when everyone's on edge. And Blink Herc plucking, I played this game for like 10 years, I still can't pull it off. I get it because he pulls. So it's really important that you learn the soul lane and how to get ahead if you pick one of these guys, because you need to get a lead and you need to push it. And you need to rotate at the right time while not losing farm. Because if you get behind, goodbye. Let's talk about the ones that are good at getting behind, basic attack warriors. So what are their strengths? Obviously, they're more flexible with their builds. As I mentioned with hunters, hunters have the benefit of being able to use any basic attack based item. So as do these guys. So you can use Kins, Executioner, Frostbound, all sorts of things. And that means they're good at countering stuff, just by buying an item. And this also means they can abuse things that hunters would abuse. Again, like that green Executioner, or maybe something like Death's Toll and its OP, or Equinox. I mean, earlier this season, Bellona was basically the #1 pick because she abused Equinox so well. And again, same idea as hunters, you don't run out of basic attacks, so you can keep on abusing overpowered items over and over again. It's not like an ability-based warrior where you just, use your abilities and now they're on cooldown and you're not getting any benefit from a strong item. And as such, they tend to be better late game. I wouldn't say much better late game, their damage does still fall off, and as well they need to be right in people's faces, which can be dangerous if, the enemy team's paying attention. But generally speaking, these guys keep up their damage throughout the match, and only get stronger and stronger. And they also have plenty of counterpick opportunities. I mean, if you get against Double Hunter, hello Bellona. If you get against an immobile character with no CC immunity, Erlong's right there. If you get against someone who has a lot of inherent healing, Osiris is right there. Again, similar to ability-based warriors, but as I just mentioned, basic attack warriors have these niche applications which makes them stronger too. And of course, why you pick them is that you want to outlast your lane opponent while not getting too far behind. For example, someone like Osiris or Bellona, they can actually just slap the wave down all day, not really interact with their lane opponent, and get by in the laning phase. Usually not getting ahead though. And of course what that means, if you're only like a level behind your lane opponent, that means you more or less kept up, and now your damage is coming up and up, and their damage is getting lower and lower as the game goes on. But of course, more importantly, you want someone who can directly fight the enemy ADC. Again, going back to Erlong, Bellona, and Osiris. These guys are wizards at fighting ADCs. I mean, nobody else can really handle them the way these characters do. Plenty of ability-based warriors, when they're ahead enough, absolutely, sure, yeah, they can just jump on the enemy ADC, but if they're even or got through behind, they can do nothing, whereas these basic attack warriors at least stand a chance. And also, as I mentioned before with things like Equinox, it's if there's a really good item they can abuse. And unfortunately for these characters, that's the biggest reason why you pick them, is because they have something they can abuse. But naturally, what you miss out on is that when they're not in the meta with stuff that they can abuse, again, like Equinox, Phalanx, stuff like that, their laning phase is really bad. For example, with Equinox, it was just because they could sustain past anything. When it was Phalanx, they were just way too tanky to even come close to dealing with. But when these items aren't that good, what are they really doing? They're not one-shotting waves or anything, so you're kind of just sitting there dying to their lane opponent and the wave alike. And of course, these guys are way worse from behind than ability-based warriors. At least ability-based warriors have more consistent CC that they can at least slap on somebody. With these characters, they need to get in the backline and somehow not die when they're behind. Basically an impossible task. So if something happens that's completely out of your control while playing these characters, for example getting invaded by the enemy jungler, it can be rough. But in addition, they can actually be pretty hard to itemize for, especially if there's not a de facto best build like there was earlier this season talking about the Phalanx and the Equinox builds. You really need to min-max your tankiness and damage to perfection, otherwise you're just going to die way before you can be effective. Speaking of dying before you can get effective, let's talk about support warriors, which is not a lot of characters, but they're definitely in their own niche. Of course, what their strengths are is that they give your team utility that other warriors simply cannot. Other warriors don't really heal or peel like these guys do. Well, peel, you can make the argument for that, but they don't heal, so here you go, another subclass. And these guys tend to not have that much damage, well, at least after Horus's early game is done, and they make up for that with a lot of mobility. These are the most mobile warriors for sure. And of course, their CC also tends to be easier to apply than other warriors. It's not like a Blink Herc Pluck or Blink Tear Fearless. This stuff is a lot more direct and easy to land, even if it does tend to not hit as many people as a Guardian CC would. So why you pick them is that your team already has plenty of damage to make up for the fact that you won't be bringing that much, and of course if you have someone to protect on your team, but your support is more of an initiator. Like say you have an Athena who's going to be doing plenty of CC, you could use a Guan Yu or a Horus in the backline to properly protect your teammates. But obviously, as I've been mentioning, what you miss out on, they're very bad at initiations versus a Guardian. I mean, there's no dash taunt here from Athena. You blink Horus, stun, or knock up, you blink Guan Yu stun, and that's kind of it. It's not really nearly as good as a Guardian. And additionally, they're easily countered in matchups, especially Guan Yu. I mean, if you can't get his spin off, good luck. I mean, these guys really can get shoved under tower, especially if they get invaded and lose their blue. These are the characters most affected by being invaded, for sure, because they're by far the most mana hungry. And just in general, right now at least, especially with Conduit Gem, god I hope it gets nerfed before the end of Smite 1, Guardians are just infinitely better in lane. They clear the wave better, they do more damage, and their CC is equal if not better. They just don't heal, that's the only difference. So while these characters are fun and you can definitely cheese with Horus early on, because his early damage is like insane, there isn't really a place for them right now at least, even though they are fun. So that wraps up the warrior subclasses and all the subclasses in the game, at least as far as I'm concerned. I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and let me know what you'd like to see next for Smite 2. Not saying the Smite 1 videos are done for good, but they're definitely coming to their end. So that's all I have for now, thank you for watching.